welcome back to the Trading Post. It's me, Fred, and this here, of course, is the star of the show, Noodle. Now, we're going to talk about Fred Files, episode 13. And this is the real-life psycho, or Norman Bates, a.k.a. Ed Gein. Ed Gein. Hang on. All right, everybody, let's go ahead and continue on. We're going to I had to put his ass up. Anyways, we're going to do this. I did the AI overview, and then I went through Wikipedia to check this stuff out to try to get as most accurate information as I could. If you have any other information, and you'd like to add to it or whatever, just, email, comment, let me know. Let me know what you think about the show. You know what I mean? We're trying to do the best we can for y'all. I'm trying to dig what I can up. So, anyways, let's continue on. I don't want to hold this up any longer. Now, the real-life inspiration for the character Norman Bates in the 1960 film Psycho was Ed Gein, a convicted murderer and grave robber from Wisconsin. Now, Ed Gein was known as the Butcher of Plainfield, or the Plainfield Ghoul. Gein was a notorious serial killer and body snatcher who murdered 2 women and exhumed corpses from local graveyards. He was found unfit to stand trial and was confined to a mental health facility. Gein died in 1984 from respiratory failure resulting from lung cancer. Now, Robert Bloch, the author of the 1959 novel Psycho, which inspired the film, was inspired by Gein's crimes. Bloch was living 40 miles away from Gein's farmhouse when he learned of the killings. He inserted a line alluding to Gein into one of the final chapters of the novel. That's interesting. Did you guys know that? I didn't know that. The fictional character Norman Bates is a solitary murderer who recreates his deceased mother in his mind as a murderous alternate personality. Okay. All right. So that's the AI overview. Sorry about that. Now we're going to do the Wikipedia. Okay. Ed Gein. Edward Theodore Gein, born August 27th, 1906, and died July 26th, 1984. Also known as the Butcher of Plainfield or the Plainfield Ghoul, was an American murderer, suspected serial killer, and body snatcher. Gein's crimes committed around his hometown of Plainfield, Wisconsin, gathered widespread notoriety in 1957 after authorities discovered that he had exhumed corpses from local graveyards and fashioned keepsakes from their bones and skin. He also confessed to killing 2 women, tavern owner Mary Hogan in 1954 and hardware store owner Bernice Warden in 1957. Born Edward Theodore Gein, August 27, 1906 in La Crosse, Wisconsin. I'm sorry about that. La Crosse, Wisconsin. Died July 26, 1984, age 77, in Mendota Mental Health Institute in Madison, Wisconsin. Resting place was Plainfield Cemetery. Other names was Eddie, the Mad Butcher, the Plainfield Ghoul, the Plainfield Butcher, the Butcher of Plainfield, and his occupation was numerous unspecified jobs. Convictions: first-degree murder, later found legally insane. Criminal penalty: he was institutionalized into the Mendota Mental Health Institute. Now the details: his victims was 2 murders confirmed and 7 others suspected. 9 corpses mutilated, obtained from desecrated graves. His span of crimes was 1947 to 1957. The country was United States and the state was Wisconsin. The date he was apprehended was November 16, 1957. Gein was initially found unfit to stand trial and confined to a mental health facility. By 1968, he was judged competent to stand trial. He was found guilty of the murder of Warden, but then was found legally insane and was remanded to psychiatric institution. Gein died at Mendota Mental Health Institute from respiratory failure resulting from lung cancer on July 26, 1984, at age 77, which was stated before. He was buried next to his family in the Plainfield Cemetery in a now unmarked grave. Now, we're going to talk about his early life. His childhood. Edward Theodore Gain was born in La Crosse, Wisconsin, and on August 27, 1906, the second of two boys of George Philip Gain, 1873 to 1940, and Augusta Wilhelmine Gain, or Nee Lurkey, 1878 to 1945. Gain had an elder brother named Henry, and Augusta, who was fervently religious and nominally Lutheran, frequently preached to her sons about the innate immortality of the world, the evil of drinking, and her belief that all women were naturally promiscuous and instruments of the devil. She reserved time every afternoon to read to them from the Bible, usually selecting verses from the Old Testament and the book of Revelation concerning death, murder, and divine retribution. Gain idolized and became obsessed with her. Augusta hated her husband, an alcoholic who was unable to keep a job. He had worked at various times as a carpenter, a tanner, and insurance salesman. During his time in La Crosse, Gain's father owned a local grocery shop, but he soon sold the business and left the city with his family to live in isolation on a 155-acre or 63-hectare farm in the town of Plainfield, Wisconsin, which became their permanent residence. Augusta took advantage of the farm's isolation by turning away outsiders who could have influenced her sons. Gain left the farm only to attend school. Outside of school, he spent most of his time doing chores on the farm. Gain was shy, and classmates and teachers remembered him as having strange mannerisms, such as seemingly random laughter, as if he were laughing at his own personal jokes. Augusta punished him whenever he tried to make friends according to family acquaintances. Despite his poor social development, Gain did fairly well in school, particularly in reading. Now, the deaths in immediate family. On April 1st, 1940, Gain's father died of heart failure at age 66. Ed and his brother Henry began doing odd jobs around town to help cover living expenses. The brothers were generally considered reliable and honest by the rest of the community. While both worked as handymen, Ed also frequently babysat for neighbors. He enjoyed babysitting, seeming to relate more easily to children than adults. Henry began dating a divorced mother of two and planned to move in with her. He worried about his brother's attachment to their mother and often spoke ill of her around Ed, who responded with shock and hurt. On May 16, 1944, Ed was burning away marsh vegetation on the property. The fire got out of control, drawing the attention of the local fire department. By the end of the day, the fire having been extinguished and the firefighters gone, Ed reported his brother missing. With lanterns and flashlights, a search party searched for 43-year-old Henry, whose dead body was found lying face down. Apparently, he had been dead for some time, and it appeared that the cause of death was heart failure, since he had not been burned or injured otherwise. It was later reported by biographer Harold Schechter that Henry had bruises on his head. Police dismissed the possibility of foul play, and the county coroner later officially listed asphyxiation as the cause of death. The authorities accepted the accident theory, but no official investigation was conducted and an autopsy was not performed. Really? Okay. They didn't deem it necessary, evidently. Questioning Gain about the death of Bernice Worden in 1957, state investigator Joe Williamowski brought up questions about Henry's death. George Arndt, who studied the case, wrote that, in retrospect, it was possible and likely that Henry's death was the Cain and Abel aspect of the case. With Henry deceased, Ed and Augusta were now alone. Augusta had a paralyzing stroke shortly after Henry's death, and Ed devoted himself to taking care of her. Sometime in 1945, he later recounted, he and his mother visited a man named Smith, who lived nearby, to purchase straw. Okay. According to Ed, Augusta witnessed Smith beating a dog. A woman inside the Smith residence came outside and yelled for him to stop, but Smith beat the dog to death. Augusta was extremely upset by this scene. However, what bothered her did not appear to be the brutality toward the dog, but rather the presence of the woman. Augusta told Ed that the woman was not married to Smith and so had no business being there, and angrily called her Smith's harlot. She had a second stroke soon after, and her health deteriorated rapidly. Augusta died on December 29th, 1945, at the age of 67. Ed was devastated by her death. In the words of Schechter, he had lost his only friend and one true love, and he was absolutely alone in the world. Now, his work. Gain held on to the farm and earned money from odd jobs. He boarded up rooms used by his mother, including the upstairs, downstairs, parlor, and living room, leaving them untouched. While the rest of the house became increasingly squalid, these rooms remained pristine. Gain lived there after in a small room next to the kitchen. Around this time, he became interested in reading pulp magazines and adventure stories, particularly those involving cannibals or Nazi atrocities, specifically concerning Eiley Koch, who selected tattooed prisoners for death in order to fashion lampshades and other items from their skin. Gain received a farm subsidy from the federal government starting in 1951. He occasionally worked for the local municipal road crew and crop thrashing crews in the local road crew and crop thrashing crews in the Plainfield area. Sometime between 1946 and 1956, he also sold an 80-acre or 32-hectare parcel of land that Henry had owned. Now, crimes that was confirmed. On the morning of November 16, 1957, 58-year-old Plainfield hardware store owner Bernice Warden disappeared. The hardware store's truck was seen driving out from the rear of the building at around 9:30 a.m. The hardware store saw a few customers the entire day. Some area residents believed that this was because of deer hunting season. Warden's son, Deputy Sheriff Frank Warden, entered the store around 5 p.m. to find the cash register open and blood stains on the floor. Frank Warden told investigators that on the evening before his mother's disappearance, Gain had been seen in the store and was expected to have returned the next morning for a gallon of antifreeze. A sales slip from the antifreeze was the last receipt written by Warden on the morning she disappeared. That evening, Gain was arrested at a West Plainfield grocery store, and the Waushara County Sheriff's Department searched the Gain farm. A sheriff's deputy discovered Warden's decapitated body in a shed on Gain's property, hung upside down by her legs with a crossbar at her ankles and ropes at her wrist. She had been shot with a .22 caliber rifle, and the mutilations were made after her death. Searching the house, authorities found whole human bones and fragments, a wastebasket made of human skin covering several chairs, skulls on his bedposts, female skulls, some with the tops sawn off, bowls made from human skulls, a corset made from a female torso, skin from the shoulders to waist, leggings made from human leg skin, masks made from the skin of female heads, Mary Hogan's face mask in a paper bag, Mary Hogan's skull in a box, Bernice Warden's entire head in a burlap sack, Bernice Warden's heart in a plastic bag in front of Gain's potbelly stove, 9 vulvae in a shoebox, a young girl's dress, and the vulvas of 2 females judged to have been around about 15 years old, a belt made from female human nipples, 4 noses, a pair of lips on a window shade drawstring, a lampshade made from the skin of a human face, fingernails from female fingers. These artifacts were photographed at the State Crime Laboratory and then decently disposed of. When questioned, Gain told investigators that between 1947 and 1952, he had made as many as 40 nocturnal visits to 3 local graveyards to exhume recently buried bodies while he was in a daze-like state. On about 30 of those visits, he said that he came out of the daze while in the cemetery, left the grave in good order, and returned home empty-handed. On the other occasions, he dug up the graves of recently buried middle-aged women he thought resembled his mother and took the bodies home, where he tanned their skins to make his paraphernalia. Gain admitted to stealing from 9 graves and led investigators to their locations. Alan Wilimowski of the State Crime Laboratory participated in opening 3 test graves identified by Gain. The caskets were inside the wooden boxes. The top boards ran crossways, not lengthwise. The tops of the boxes were about 2 feet or 61 centimeters below the surface in sandy soil. Gain had robbed the graves soon after the funerals while the graves were not completed. The test graves were exhumed because authorities were uncertain as to whether the slight Gain was capable of single-handedly digging up a grave during a single evening. They were found, as Gain described. One casket was empty, another casket contained Gain's crowbar, and the final casket saw most of the body missing. Yet, Gain had returned rings and some body parts, thus Gain's confession was largely corroborated. Soon after his mother's death, Gain began to create a woman's suit so that he could become his mother, to literally crawl into her skin. He denied having sex with the bodies he exhumed, explaining they smelled too bad. During State Crime Laboratory interrogation, Gain also admitted to shooting 51-year-old Mary Hogan, a tavern owner missing since December 8th of 1954, whose head was found in his house, but he later denied memory of details of her death. A 16-year-old youth whose parents were friends of Gain and who attended baseball games and movies with him reported that Gain kept shrunken heads in his house, which he had described as relics sent by a cousin who had served in the Philippines during World War II. Upon investigation by the police, these were determined to be human facial skins, carefully peeled from corpses and used by Gain as masks. During questioning, Sheriff Art Schley reportedly assaulted Gain by banging his head and face into a brick wall. As a result, Gain's initial confession was ruled inadmissible. Schley died of heart failure in 1968 at age 43 before Gain's trial. Many who knew Schley said he was traumatized by the horror of Gain's crimes, and this, along with the fear of having to testify, especially about assaulting Gain, caused his death. That's sad. Suspected. In addition to the murders of Hogan and Warden, Gain was also considered a suspect in several other unsolved cases in Wisconsin. In November 1957, authorities confronted Gain with a list of missing persons cases that had occurred between the death of his mother and Warden. Their suspicions were further aroused after the discovery of Hogan's remains. However, lie detector tests seemingly exonerated Gain of any other murders, and his psychiatrists concluded that his violence was only directed to women who physically resembled his mother. Now, Georgia Jean Weckler, 8, disappeared near her farm home in Fort Atkinson at approximately 3:30 p.m. on May 1st, 1947. She was given a lift home from grade school in Jefferson by a neighbor who dropped Weckler off at the lane that led from U.S. Highway 12 to the Weckler farm. Weckler was last seen pausing to open the family mailbox and removing a stack of mail. She was never seen again. Witnesses reported seeing a dark-colored, possibly black 1936 Ford sedan with a gray plastic spotlight in the vicinity that afternoon. Gain owned a black 1937 Ford. Now, Evelyn Grace Hartley, age 15, went missing while babysitting a 20-month-old girl at the home of La Crosse State College professor Viggo Rasmussen on the evening of October 24, 1953 in La Crosse. That evening, her father Richard called the Rasmussen house several times after she failed to check in as planned at 8:30 p.m. He received no answer. Concerned, he drove to the Rasmussen house to find the doors were locked, the lights and radio on, and items scattered all over the house. The living room furniture had been moved around to different places, as were Evelyn's school books. Richard found her shoes in different rooms, one shoe upstairs and one downstairs. He also found his daughter's broken glasses upstairs. Richard did not find Evelyn in the house. After his arrest, Gain was questioned regarding Evelyn's disappearance. However, he denied involvement in the disappearance and passed 2 lie detector tests. Police found no trace of Evelyn's remains during a search of Gain's property. Then you have Victor Harold Travis, age 42, a resident of Adams County, went off to hunt deer in the company of acquaintance Raymond Burgess on November 1st, 1952. In the late afternoon, the pair stopped for refreshments at Mac's Bar in Plainfield for several hours. At around 7 p.m., they both left the bar, got into Burgess's car, and drove away. The hunters, along with the car Burgess was driving, were never seen again, and no trace of them was ever found. Travis and Burgess had been hunting on the farm next to Gaines' place, despite his objections on the day of their disappearance. In addition, Gain has also been tentatively linked to the June 1954 disappearance of neighbor James Walsh, age 32. Walsh and his wife lived near Gain, who performed chores for her after her husband went missing. Gain was also investigated for potential involvement in the August 1956 disappearance of Irene Keating, age 30, who was last seen in Plainfield, and in the attempted abduction of Judy Rodenkall, of age 16, from Auroraville. Now, the aftermath of the trial. On November 21st, 1957, Gain was arraigned on one count of first-degree murder in Waushara County Court, where he pleaded not guilty by reason of insanity. He was diagnosed with schizophrenia and found mentally incompetent, thus unfit for trial. He was sent to the Central State Hospital for the Criminally Insane, now the Dodge Correctional Institution, a maximum security facility in Walpen, and later transferred to the Mendota State Hospital in Madison. In 1968, doctors determined Gain was mentally able to confer with counsel and participate in his defense. The trial began on November 7, 1968, and lasted a week. A psychiatrist testified that Gain had told him that he did not know whether the killing of Warden was intentional or accidental. Gain had told him that while he examined a gun in Warden's store, the weapon discharged and killed Warden. He said he had not aimed the rifle at Warden and did not remember anything else that happened that morning. At the request of the defense, Gain's trial was held without a jury, with Judge Robert H. Golmar presiding. Gain was found guilty by Golmar on November 14th. A second trial dealt with Gain's sanity. After testimony by doctors for the prosecution and defense, Golmar ruled Gain not guilty by reason of insanity and ordered him committed to Central State Hospital for the criminally insane. Gain spent the rest of his life in a mental hospital. Judge Golmar wrote, due to prohibitive costs, Gain was tried for only one murder, that of Miss Warden. He also admitted to killing Mary Hogan. Now, the fate of Gain's property. Gain's house and 195-acre or 79-hectare property were appraised at $4,700, equivalent to $50,000 in 2023. Now, his possessions were scheduled to be auctioned on March 30th, 1958, amidst rumors that the house and the land it stood on might become a tourist attraction. Early on the morning of March 20th, the house was destroyed by fire. A deputy fire marshal reported that a garbage fire had been set 75 feet or 23 meters from the house by a cleaning crew who was given the task of disposing of refuse. That hot coals were recovered from the spot of the bonfire, but that the fire did not spread along the ground from that location to the house. Arson was suspected, but the cause of the fire was never officially determined. It is possible that the fire was not considered a matter of urgency by Fire Chief Frank Warden, son of Gaines' victim, Bernice Warden. When Gain learned of the incident while in detention, he shrugged and said, just as well. Gaines' Ford sedan, which he used to haul the bodies of his victims, was sold at public auction for $760, equivalent to $8,000 in 2023, to a carnival sideshow operator, Bunny Gibbons. Gibbons charged carnival goers 25 cents admissions to see it. Now, the death of Gain. Gain died at the Mendota Mental Health Institute due to respiratory failure secondary to lung cancer on July 26, 1984, at the age of 77. Over the years, souvenir seekers chipped pieces from his gravestone at the Plainfield Cemetery until the stone itself was stolen in 2000. It was recovered in June 2001 near Seattle, Washington, and was placed in storage at the Washara County Sheriff's Department. The gravesite itself is now unmarked but not unknown. Gain is interred between his parents and brother in the cemetery. Now, in popular culture, we're going to go ahead and finish off with that. Gain's story has had a lasting effect on American popular culture, as evidenced by its numerous appearances in film, music, and literature. The tale first came to widespread public attention in the fictionalized version presented by Robert Bloch in his 1959 suspense novel, Psycho. In addition to Alfred Hitchcock's 1960 film of Bloch's novel Psycho, Gain's story was loosely adapted into numerous films, including Deranged, circa 1974, In the Light of the Moon, circa 2000, released in the U.S. and Australia as Ed Gain, 2001, Ed Gain, The Butcher of Plainfield, circa 2007, and Ed Gain the Musical, 2010, and the Rob Zombie films House of a Thousand Corpses and its sequel, The Devil's Rejects. Gain served as the inspiration for a myriad of fictional serial killers, most notably Norman Bates from Psycho, Leatherface, The Texas Chainsaw Massacre, Buffalo Bill in The Silence of the Lambs, Garland Green in Con Air, and the character Dr. Oliver Thredson in the TV series American Horror Story, Asylum. American filmmaker Errol Morris and German filmmaker Werner Herzog attempted unsuccessfully to collaborate on a film project about Gain from 1975 to 1976. Morris claimed to have interviewed Gain several times and ended up spending almost a year at Plainfield interviewing dozens of locals. The pair planned secretly to exhume Gain's mother from her grave to test a theory, but never followed through on the scheme and eventually ended their collaboration. The aborted project was described in a 1989 New Yorker profile of Morris. Gain's story inspired American grunge band Tad to write the song Nipple Belt from their 1989 album God's Balls. Gain also inspired American thrash metal band Slayer to write the song Dead Skin Mask from their 1990 album Seasons in the Abyss. Additionally, Gain was the inspiration and namesake for the song Nothing to Gain by American heavy metal band Mudvayne from their 2000 album LD50. The character Patrick Bateman in the 1991 novel American Psycho and its 2000 film adaptation mistakenly attributes a quote by Edmund Kemper to Gain saying, "You know what Ed Gain said about women. He said, when I see a pretty girl walking down the street, I think two things. One part of me wants to take her out, talk to her, be real nice and sweet and treat her right. But the other part wonders what her head would look like on a stick." According to George W. Arndt, news reports at the time of Gain's crimes spawned a subgenre of black humor called Gainers. That's a lot to wrap up, y'all. Good Lord. Whoa. This is news to me, y'all. This is all news to me, you know. I didn't even realize he was so... Like, he influenced so much other stuff. Like, this is probably one of the more morbid ones that I've went across so far. I mean, I don't know. I mean, there's a lot of morbid stuff. There's a lot of, but yeah, this is like an extent that's like it takes it to pass that the I guess your typical murder threshold. It takes it to a whole new level on this with the stuff he did. I mean, my God. But yeah, I guess I mean I'm gonna try and do the real life Leatherface here on another one, but evidently he was the inspiration for Leatherface. I didn't even know that, so that just probably scratches that all to hell. Anyways, you know, I feel bad for the people that was murdered, the people that had to. Well, I mean, they was killed before they was tortured, but still, the fact that they was desecrated like that in that manner, that's just beyond wrong, y'all. That's beyond wrong. I mean, there couldn't be anything more disrespectful, in my opinion. I mean, well, I mean, maybe there is if you know he might have violated the bodies or something like that, but I think that would probably take it up another notch where it'd be way, way, way out of control. Which, not that what he already did wasn't way out of control. So I'm not trying to dull it down, but wow, I'm really kind of speechless on this one. I really never really looked into him until just now. So, I mean, we've all heard about Ed Gein, you know what I mean? But did we really listen to the story? Did we really look into it? Did we really find out the details of it or hear the details of it? You know, we may have heard it maybe at a time or so and just tuned it out and never really paid attention. But you guys, like, this poor man, I feel bad for the man himself because he was mentally distraught. Like, you know, he got to the point where he obsessed over his mother. Literally went out and killed women that looked like his mother so he could try and wear her skin and be in her skin. Really? Wow, if that ain't jacked, man, I don't know what is. But you know, nevertheless, I hope you know the people that passed found peace, you know, in after death. Hopefully, the families of these poor people that was slain actually got their form of closure or you know peace at the end of all this. Yeah, it's jacked up. It's really jacked up, you know. But my God, you know, I can only imagine that poor police officer, the one that I was talking about. I'm trying to think of his daggone name now. But anyways, the police officer that literally like had a heart attack or whatever due to all the stress because he beat Ed Gein. I mean, can you really blame the guy for kind of taking that out on him because it sickened him so much? I mean, this man's seen this stuff personally. What all he did. The aftermath of what he'd done. You know. And you can't blame the guy because he didn't know that the guy was mentally ill, for one. Two, it was such a horrific scene. It was something that I don't even know if any other police officers ever come across that same scenario. I'm sure there's a possibility they have, but it's very, very highly unlikely because this was a kind of a unique case where it's absolutely astronomically crazy, batshit crazy. But yeah, y'all, this here was the real life Norman Bates, the real life psycho, and possibly / real life Leatherface. So we may leave it at that on this episode. So he'll be considered both. Or I may actually find out and dig in and find something else out and maybe do the Leatherface episode, which I planned on doing. So we'll go ahead and get into that later on. We'll see. Or we'll just leave it at this. And I will see you guys on the next one. Again, this is, what is this? Fred Files episode, I think 13, right? Yeah, Fred Files episode 13, y'all. Okay? The real life psycho, Norman Bates, a.k.a. Ed Gein. Now, I'll see you on the next one, you guys. Get ready. Because this month, it's going to be nothing but nonstop crazy Halloween action, fun, and laughs. So stay tuned, y'all. Till next time, live, laugh, and love. Because life isn't promised to anyone.